He kōna e purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
No mai, haere mai, kia ora, and welcome back to the Music 101 interview podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome along. My name's Charlotte Ryan and I host the music show every Saturday afternoon on RNZ National. And this podcast features our favourite and best interviews of the week. And today, it's a very special one. A musician who was trained underneath Horomona Melbourne and has just been awarded an Arts Laureate prize. I'm talking Horomona Horo. He's one of Aotearoa's best-known taonga pūoro practitioners. He's a masterful composer and musician, but it's the traditional Māori music instruments that really has taken his music to the next level. He's performed across so many genres and collaborated with so many musicians before. He's worked with classical, pop and hip-hop musicians. He's worked with artists from Kiritikanawa, to Moana and The Tribe. And I was so excited not only to talk to him about what it was like being mentored by Horomona Melbourne, but I also wanted him to talk about how taonga pūoro is seen these days, how it's recognised, how it's valued. And the first question I asked him, if I was pronouncing the word taonga pūoro correctly.
You are correct, it's taonga pūoro, and taonga pūoro basically means taonga being the treasure and pūoro being the musical notation of it, and so singing treasures. One of my papa, I call him my papa, mentors, advisors and people I look up to. Brian Flintoff, actually, him and Horomona Melbourne wrote a book called Taonga Pūoro Singing Treasures, and so it gave the whole, not just the country, but the rest of the world, a little explanation of what the traditional Māori musical instruments are.
Before that book was released, did New Zealand or the world have much understanding of what traditional Māori instruments were?
They weren't too familiar because it's been a story of revitalisation through the likes of my mentors who have passed, being Dr. Horomona Melbourne, Dr. Richard Nuns, as well as Hinewirangi Kohu, and one of the many great stories of traditional Māori story and our language, Professor or Dr. Wharehuia Muroi, and they reinvigorated this practice that was nearly lost to our people. Yeah. And so they weren't the only ones, there were many others, but we'll be here for a long time if I mentioned all the names. But the 1908 tohunga, what was known as the Tohunga Suppressions Act, stopped a lot of our cultural practices for many varying reasons. And so it wasn't until the 1970s, 1980s, where the likes of Hirini, Richard and Brian and many others started to revitalise and bring this practice of musical healing back into form.
Yeah, beautiful. When did you realise that you really connected with taonga pūoro? Did you grow up in the marae? Were there sort of instruments all over the place, or was there a special moment for you? Yeah,
it was a special moment. I wasn't brought up knowing a lot of my Māori culture. I wasn't. We would go to the marae when somebody had passed away, but that was very seldom. And so it wasn't until I had jumped into a national collective of youth in the preparation of what was known as the 5th World Indigenous Youth Conference that was going to be held up in Waitangi in 1998. I fell in love with culture, and through that I was told to pick up a conch shell, play it, and started to pick up all these other little Fidji bits, and it did something to me that nothing else did. I already loved music. I was a freestyler in the world of hip-hop, and when I came across taonga pūoro, it's sort of like it hit me emotionally. Picking up these instruments, when I would play certain melodies, it would make me cry. And I was like, oh, what's it doing to me? And I'd play certain instruments, and then I'd get little birds coming and dancing and prancing in front of me, and I was thinking, am I seeing this right? And I'd be there with my nephews and nieces. They're like, oh, uncle, look, when you play that whistle thing, the birds are coming and dancing with us. I was like, can you see that? I thought it was just me. It introduced me to a different type of magic. And And I've been enticed from that very moment, from then to now, to this very day, of seeing what other areas of that particular magic can do.
I love that. You're in the studio. Before you put on your headphones, you had to take out a bone from your ear. Is that a taonga pūoro?
Yes, this particular instrument's known as a kōwauau, which is a flute. They're made out of bone, stone, wood.
What sort of bone? What?
This particular one is a dog bone. Died naturally.
Yes.
And-
Your pet?
No, a friend of mine, Warren Warbrick. He's a carver, and he's one of the master carvers of taonga pūoro. And it was one of his pets, died naturally, and he pulled up some of the bones of this particular pet of his, and because he carves a lot of the instruments and a lot of Māori taonga out of different timbers and different natural materials, he uses traditional materials to create them. And so instead of a power drill, he uses what we call a tūwiri, which is a traditional form of a drill. It takes a lot longer to create them, but his focus and his, I suppose we would say, professionalism within his craft, personifies the beauty of the instruments he carves, and every single one of his instruments plays beautifully.
Can you play a little bit for us?
Cool. And so I suppose the piece that I'll play is just a little section of one of the first compositions that I wrote, and it pays homage to our women, our mothers, going back into our female deities.
That is beautiful. Horomona Horo is performing live in the RNZ studio. A beautiful taonga pūoro that you pulled out of your ear. Horo, what does it mean to you to become an Arts Laureate of Aotearoa?
Yeah, it's definitely very seldom can people get me silent, lost for words. And so when I got the phone call, I was driving and it was on speaker, so I wasn't holding it in my hand or anything. She let me know what had happened, and I was, lost for words, and got a little bit emotional, and she was sort of like saying, so how does it feel, And so, holding the laureate in my hand was quite surreal, was really great, because as an artist, sometimes you can feel unseen, and the words that Chelsea let me know is like, Horo, we see you. We recognise and acknowledge, the long and hard yaka you've gone through in your career. Yeah, it was really a wonderful acknowledgement that I can share with my kids, because the many times over the years that I've sacrificed time away from my family, away from my young kids, they were babies. I was playing taonga pūoro to their mother when they were each in the womb of their mother. I would talk to her womb, sometimes more than I would talk to her.
What's next for you now in your career? Because especially with this acknowledgement, I hope that you can, sit in it and enjoy this praise in a sense. But what's next for you? Do you have goals? Are you a goal maker?
No, for taonga pūoro, for many it's seen as an accompaniment or something to help, add the flavouring to a musical track.
Or the atmosphere.
And yet still there's, I suppose, in the music world, there's not really a lot of acknowledgement in some spaces. In the world of music here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the language of Māori is seen, but I suppose the challenges, because when you see categories in our music awards where you see country music, you see heavy metal, you see rock, reggae, hip-hop, R&B, there's nothing really there for taonga pūoro. Because it's always used as an accompaniment in all those genres. I've played with all of those genres and still trying to challenge the system and acknowledging taonga pūoro. Even in the world of classical, I've played taonga pūoro in many different forms of ensembles, duets, trios, quartets, all the way through to orchestras. And it's usually at the end of the day, it's the classical composer that gets acknowledged, not so much the taonga pūoro composer.
Yes.
And so that's the continuing challenge we have as practitioners of taonga pūoro, in where can we identify and work alongside the powers that be to allow taonga pūoro to be acknowledged for its art form, because Richard Nuns and Hirini Melbourne were acknowledged in the New Zealand Music Hall of Fame, and yet for young up-and-coming taonga pūoro musicians or even composers, there's nothing really for them to climb to. There are more and more taonga pūoro players coming through, and so how can we look to them and let them know there are mountains to climb and there are goals for them to reach? And so this Arts Laureate, a couple of years ago, another taonga pūoro practitioner became a laureate, and so it was Ariana Tikau. And so she was beautiful folk singer, as well as she plays taonga pūoro as well. And so when we can have our up-and-coming taonga pūoro players, musicians, composers coming through and seeing the voices of taonga pūoro in these spaces, it allows us to see there is something to have long-term visionary goals for. And so being an Arts Laureate is part of the journey to show the next generation they can do it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Horomona Horo, congratulations again for being an Arts Laureate, and thank you for sharing your stories.
Ngā mihi nui kia koe. O tira he mihi tēnei ki te motu whānui. It's thank you all for listening today, and don't forget my challenge to you all whānau. Go and check out something taonga pūoro, and don't forget to ask the practitioner a question to help you start your journey into the world of taonga pūoro.
I love that piece of advice that Horomona Horo has given us. Ask questions. Where did the taonga pūoro come from? Congratulations, a huge, massive congratulations to Horo becoming a new Arts Laureate. It's a huge accomplishment, and I hope he treasures it and enjoys this magic moment of celebrating his career. I'm so excited to see what he does next and how the strength of taonga pūoro will rise, hopefully in New Zealand even more. But yeah, if you're going to listen to any music, Horo's actually got a whole lot of music online on Spotify. You can go and listen to his beautiful tracks there, very atmospheric. Or my tip, one of my favourite tracks released over the last couple of years, Ka Manu by Rob Ruha and Bella Kololo and Maisie Rika. Horo plays the taonga pūoro on that track, and it's so distinctive, so important in the song. It is like another voice. Anyway, I'm back this Saturday live on RNZ National from 1 p.m. if you want to tune in. But otherwise, follow this podcast, and if you enjoyed the interview that I did with Horo, feel free to forward it on to your friends who might enjoy it too. Until next time, take care. Kia ora.